on many Canadian goods. Wait, what is happening? What is going on, brother? What the fuck? What? Why? As I've talked about already, the Houthis sent some of their the Houthis sent a coalition to Iran for the funeral of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. And then that contingency came back and flew directly from Tehran to Sanaa airport. And Saudi Arabia wanted to maintain its blockade on Yemen and blew up the airport runway with missiles. Now, the airplane landed at a different airport, but then the Ansar Allah movement, in retaliation to that, turned around and attacked some of the American bases in Saudi Arabia and some of the civilian airports in Saudi Arabia as well. This happened a couple days ago. This happened last week. Okay? And since then, the Ansar Allah has been aching to get into the fight. They did a mass mobilization. Part of the reason why Saudi Arabia has been trying to implement a blockade is because obviously if they don't, from their perspective, they don't maintain a blockade, and if there is a direct flight between Tehran and Sanaa in Yemen, then they can send more arms. The Iranians could send more arms to Yemen and beef up their defenses and their offensive capabilities. This is something that the Saudis don't want because the Ansar Allah movement is an ever-present threat on the choke point Bab el-Mandeb. The Bab el-Mandeb choke point is a strait that is the entry point into the Red Sea. The Red Sea, now that the Persian Gulf is rendered inaccessible by the Iranians, is the only way that Saudi Arabia can transit their oil tankers, the only way that the United Arab Emirates could ship out their oil tankers, many of which pass through a pipeline from the Persian Gulf side all the way to the Red Sea. This would have devastating consequences depending on the severity of this blockade that the Ansar Allah movement is intending to implement. This would have devastating consequences on Brent crude prices. It would also have a devastating consequence on the Saudi economy and the economy of the Gulf states that are still utilizing the Red Sea route. Now, Yemen's Iranian-backed Houthis, the Ansar Allah movement, is saying they will block Saudi shipping at the Red Sea Gateway. Here it is, across from Djibouti. This is the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. While the Houthis are primarily based out of Sanaa, they still have targeting capabilities and can, stop transit with ease from the Red Sea, I believe it's the Fujairah port, right? If I'm not mistaken. I'm sure this article will cover it. Yemen's Iranian-backed Houthi rebels on Monday announced that they're imposing a maritime embargo against Saudi Arabia in retaliation for a blockade on Yemen and a recent attack on the Sanaa International Airport, threatening another vital waterway for global shipping and raising fears of renewed conflict. A Houthi military spokesperson, Yahya Sari, said in a video statement that the maritime ban against Saudi Arabia will be effective immediately. Oh, sorry, the Fujairah port is the UAE port on the Gulf of Oman. It's actually past the choke point of the Strait of Hormuz. The UAE is using the Fujairah port to ship out whatever it can, right? Isn't that the one? Or no, is it the oil pipeline? Okay, Yanbu is the Saudi Arabian port, but the UAE is also utilizing the Saudi Arabian pipeline as well. There's an oil pipeline that goes across Saudi Arabia that dumps into the Yanbu port, which then will take ships through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, and this is a way for them to avoid the Strait of Hormuz. It's obviously its capabilities are only around 5 to 7% of its regular of the regular ports on the Persian Gulf side, but it's still significant, and it's been in business since the Strait of Hormuz was closed. There were very few details on how the embargo might work, but the deputy head of the Houthi media office, Nasruddin Amer, said on X that the Bab el-Mandeb Strait will be closed to the Saudis in response to what he called the kingdom's unjust blockade on Yemenis for over 10 years. Bab el-Mandeb, at the southern tip of the Arabian Peninsula, is the gateway to the Red Sea, through which around 12% of the world's trade usually passes. A fourth of global container trade transits through the 32-kilometer, 20-mile wide strait to and from the Suez Canal. The Houthis earlier demonstrated their ability to disrupt shipping, where they targeted ships for months over the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza with over 100 vessels attacked. It's unclear whether the Houthis will resume that level of attack against neighboring Saudi Arabia. There was no immediate response from Saudi Arabia. The kingdom already faced pressure as it uses the east-west pipeline to the Red Sea as an alternative to the Strait of Hormuz, which remains in the grip that Iran imposed shortly after the U.S. and Israel attacked it on February 28th. Here is the announcement breaking Houthis of Yemen announce a maritime embargo against Saudi Arabia effective immediately. Saudi Arabia has now exported 4.5 million barrels per day from Yanbu in the Red Sea. This is their port in the Red Sea, most of it heading south throughout the Bab el-Mandeb Strait between Yemen and Djibouti and Eritrea. First, the Yemeni armed forces declare a maritime embargo against the criminal Saudi enemy based on the equation of an eye for an eye, effective immediately upon the issuance of this statement. Second, we affirm the right of our great people to respond to the blockade with a blockade and to respond to all escalation with all escalation, thus solidifying this equation. Third, the Yemeni armed forces affirm their complete readiness for all options, and any foolish act committed by the reckless Saudi enemy through all escalation will be met with a comprehensive and decisive escalation by Allah's will and power. Fourth, we call upon the people of our great nation to continue the general mobilization and general call to arms, and to be fully prepared for all scenarios and developments, and to support the fronts with fighters. Fifth, we extend our greetings with pride and reverence to our great Yemeni people who turned out in an unprecedented million-man march on a march of warning and mobilization. We assure them that we will spare no effort in restoring their plundered rights and ending the unjust siege imposed upon them, whatever the consequences and repercussions, relying on Allah and placing our trust in Allah. Saudi, the foreign ministry 2 hours ago, released a statement claiming they're not besieging Yemen. Last week, they literally bombed Sana'a airport because a civilian plane was coming from Iran. Holy shit. They wrote an effort post of all effort posts. The foreign ministry expresses the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia's strongest condemnation of the allegations made by the so-called military spokesperson of the Houthi terrorist militia, who accused the kingdom of besieging the brotherly Yemeni people and claimed the imposition of a maritime blockade on the kingdom. So they did do that, but this is classic Saudi cry bullying. Okay? Because remember, a blockade, if you're Saudi Arabia, this is how you implement a blockade. You render travel impossible, which is precisely what they've been doing to limited degrees since 2015. It was far more severe back in the day. It caused massive famine. If you guys recall, I covered it at the time. There was a civil war that took place. Obviously, the Houthis won. Ansar Allah won against the Saudi-backed proxy forces, against the UAE-backed proxy forces, and the Houthis are a Zaidi Shia family. Okay, so there's also like a religious. This conflict also takes some religious shape as well. It's a sectarian civil war as well, right? Because there are Shias in Yemen, and then there are Sunnis in Yemen as well. Of course, Saudi Arabia was the worst actor in this conflict, implementing a man-made blockade that caused a famine, human rights abuse, could be considered a genocide. And of course, they were backed by the United States of America because the Houthis were seen as a proxy to the Iranians, given their Shia background. So, what is this? Yeah, this was a sad state of affairs, but our hearts are heavy today for the 19-year-old Private Isabella Gonzalez of Carrollton, Texas. A brave young soldier was killed Friday in Iranian missile and drone strikes against U.S. base in Jordan. Oh, dude, I'm not talking about Ansar Allah's popularity in the whole region. That doesn't matter. We're talking about Yemen only. Yes, of course, Ansar Allah is unbelievably popular in the rest of the region. Are you kidding me? That's not the conversation that we're having. The conversation that we're having is that There are literally, it's so sad that many of the Yemenis had to choose the side of the Houthis, but shit happens when people experience famine and are desperate for 7+ years since the war with Saudi. Exactly. Yes, the Ansar Allah movement is unbelievably popular outside of Yemen. It's not even a question. Pro-Palestine politics in Yemen is unlike any other country. There is no pro-Israel Yemeni leadership. It's never existed. Sunni, Shia, doesn't matter. If you want to know ball, if you want to understand, if you want to better understand the situation in Yemen, in spite of all of the outlets that are positioning themselves in a very specific direction, understand that the Ansar Allah movement, albeit unpopular initially because it was a sectarian conflict that was very bloody, has been able to maintain popularity throughout Israel's genocide in Gaza. And even oppositional forces have basically put down their arms and joined forces with the Ansar Allah ranks. Even the Houthi militias, or not the Houthi militias, sorry, even the Sunni militias and Sunni forces in the country have joined forces with the Ansar Allah because of their war that they're waging against Israel as it continues its genocide.
Latest from Bloomberg Washington correspondent Tyler Kendall. Tyler, it is.
And obviously, for all the fucking dullards in the chat, this is not me endorsing their domestic policies or anything like that. That's not where I'm coming from. How do you verify the contrary to the establishment info? Analysts that are Yemeni and also people that I know in my normie sphere that are from Yemen who have family members and direct contacts inside of Yemen.
Is headline whiplash this morning.
It definitely is. And that latest one that you mentioned is going to be a stark escalation, Danny, as we get this confirmation from the spokesperson for the Iranian-backed Houthi militia group that they are planning to immediately implement this maritime blockade against Saudi Arabia. We should keep in mind the broader context here that we can't only see this through the lens of the U.S.-Iran war, that this is also related to a truce breaking down between Saudi Arabia and the Houthis from 2022. We've seen this exchange of fire between the two sides, but this is definitely the farthest that we've seen that specific thread go, considering that we know Saudi Arabia has been relying on that east-west pipeline to move supplies to the Red Sea to the tune of about 4.5 million barrels of oil per day. And last week, we did have Iran ask the Houthis to be ready to deploy assets to actually shut down that shipping route. So we knew that there was action in motion to prepare for this. So we'll have to see if it actually ends up getting imposed and what those ramifications are going to look like. Because Danny and Isabel, at this point, commercial traffic, at least observable transits, are at a basic standstill, according to new satellite imagery that was analyzed by Bloomberg News. And adding to the risk, it appears that vessels that are moving.
Who's crying? I don't know. Do you hear crying? I don't hear it.
Through with their transponders off are also being targeted. We had the IRGC over the weekend saying that they halted at least 4 ships that had turned off their radars completely. And keep in mind, that is the way that most of these ships had been trying to make safe transit through the waterway.
All right, Tyler, thank you very much. Bloomberg's Tyler Kendall in Washington, D.C. Let's get a check on markets, because despite that headline volatility, that back and forth, Brent crude doing a whole lot of nothing, just holding at $88 a barrel. It was at $90 earlier. S&P 500, that's up about 0.4% as the NASDAQ outperforms a bounce back after the worst week for chip stocks since Liberation Day, as 10-year yields move higher by 2 basis points. Isabel, some of the movers on our radar this morning.
This morning, we have learned the names of 2 of the service members killed as a result of that Iranian attack on a U.S. base in Jordan. Both are Army soldiers, one an officer. First Lieutenant Tyler James Fian, who was 25 and from Hawaii, and Private Isabella Gonzalez from Carrollton, Texas, who was just 19 years old. And we are learning this morning they were not the only ones killed as this war widens. Overnight, the U.S. launching a wave of strikes on Iran, the 9th consecutive night of bombing, as CENTCOM announces that human remains were found at the site where 2 U.S. service members were killed in that Iranian attack on the U.S. base here in Jordan. The remains likely those of the service member said to be missing after the Iranian attack.
We hit him very hard again tonight, and we did that in honor of the probably 3. It's probably 3 as opposed to 2. Great patriots.
CENTCOM also announcing that a service member was killed in Iraq during the controlled detonation of a downed Iranian.
I don't know how the fuck that, like, it's so clearly it wasn't a controlled detonation. I think they're just trying to hide the shame to the best of their ability. Like, I don't understand. I mean, accidents happen, maybe, but I have no reason to believe the official government narrative on any of this stuff, because what gets out, what they have to openly confirm, implies that these were active duty service members that died in battle, so they have a duty to report to their next of kin, their immediate family members. So this is the stuff that gets out. There's a shit ton more contractors that we'll never hear from, that are either currently inside of hospitals. There's a shit ton more severe casualties that are that render them inoperable, that can't go back into battle. One of the ways that the American government often hides the casualty data is by saying, oh, they had a little bit of CTE, right? That can range from a guy who got shook up to a guy who's basically a vegetable. Okay, like the military has a way of reporting this stuff in a way that doesn't come across as like super damaging. So if you hear 3 people died, there's probably a lot more hidden casualties. The casualty numbers are probably far higher.
One-way attack drone. The U.S. strikes on Iran this weekend, targeting Iran's Revolutionary Guard, believed to be responsible for the attacks on American troops. Iran has launched attacks.
Yeah, they say TBI. Sorry, not CTE. I apologize. TBI, traumatic brain injury.
Across the region this morning, targeting both Kuwait and Bahrain. The Kuwaiti army saying its air defenses are currently confronting attacks by hostile drones. It was a combination of drones and missiles in that deadly strike that hit the base in Jordan. Video circulating online appearing to show projectiles falling over the base, some intercepted, but others making a direct hit. Sources telling us one of those strikes hit a housing containment unit, raising questions among some military experts about Iran's capabilities, despite the administration saying the Iranian military was decimated.
Potentially, the Iranians are changing their tactics. They could be using more advanced ballistic missiles, some that maneuver upon re-entry, thus making it more difficult for Patriot to intercept them.
An official telling ABC News U.S. fighter jets stationed in the United Kingdom and Germany are now being sent to the Middle East. And this nearly 5-month-long war, which began with the U.S. and Israel launching strikes on Iran, appears to have once again brought traffic through the critical Strait of Hormuz to a crawl. Market data shows only 8 vessels navigated the strait on Friday, although Energy Secretary Chris Wright is disputing that.
Almost all the public data I've seen is incorrect. There's flow through 2 routes through the Strait of Hormuz.
The renewed fighting spiking the cost of oil and gas. A gallon of gas now $4 at a time when...
I mean, what's the expectation here? Of course it was going to happen. Throw the MOU to the side, and these are the results you're going to get. These are the results that you wanted to get. Okay? Now you got them. That's where we're at.
Americans are already paying more for goods.
And it's worse overall. It's worse. It's worse than last time around because there's no buffer. There's no strategic petroleum reserves. The reserves are at critical levels. So what's the expectation? How do you change this around? Iran's missile and drone capacity has been massively underestimated. We knew that from the 40-day war. The numbers and capabilities have been grossly underestimated. But after this week, it should be clear to even the thickest observers in D.C., and the IRI is still holding back. ZBS News also covered this, and nearly 100 U.S. service members have been injured in Iranian attacks on multiple bases in the Middle East this month. U.S. officials told me some suffered traumatic brain injuries. Most have already returned to duty, 2 of the officials said. Chief Pentagon spokesman Sean Parnell confirmed the numbers in a statement to CBS. While nearly 100 service members were deemed to have some degree of injury since July 7th, 96% have returned to duty. They are determined to get back in the fight. The vast majority of injuries experienced were minor concussions. Further updates will be posted on the Defense Casualty Analysis System. God is good, Parnell said. Yeah, minor brain injuries. Yeah, just a little bit of brain damage for Israel is fine.
Due to inflation.
ZBS News also covered this, and nearly 100 U.S. service members have been injured in Iranian attacks on multiple bases in the Middle East this month. U.S. officials told me some suffered traumatic brain injuries. Most have already returned to duty, 2 of the officials said. Chief Pentagon spokesman Sean Parnell confirmed the numbers in a statement to CBS. While nearly 100 service members were deemed to have some degree of injury since July 7th, 96% have returned to duty. They are determined to get back in the fight. The vast majority of injuries experienced were minor concussions. Further updates will be posted on the Defense Casualty Analysis System. God is good, Parnell said. Yeah, minor brain injuries. Yeah, just a little bit of brain damage for Israel is fine.
Due to inflation. Both the Iranians and the Americans say they are still open to negotiation, but as it stands this morning, it looks like we are closer to all-out war than any sort of peace agreement. And Americans around the world have now been issued a worldwide caution alert. Whit?
All right, Martha Raddatz for us. We appreciate it.
We now have the names of 2 of the 3 service members killed in recent days in the war with Iran. The Pentagon says they were killed during an Iranian attack on an airbase in Jordan. It comes as the U.S. says it has retaliated for those strikes, and Iran launches new attacks. The escalating war also means rising gas prices. They are now back above $4 a gallon. Charlie D'Agata is in Jordan. And Charlie, what can you tell us about these service members?
Yeah, good morning, Nora. So the soldiers have just been identified as 19-year-old Isabella Gonzalez of Carrollton, Texas, just 19 years old. 25-year-old First Lieutenant Tyler James Freehan, he's from Hawaii, both assigned to Army Air Missile Defense Command. An investigation is underway as the fighting continues.
For the 9th straight night, U.S. forces unleashed wave after wave of airstrikes against Iran, extending its reach and scope of targets beyond the Strait of Hormuz, according to U.S. Central Command. But Washington's vow to swiftly punish Iran for the deaths of U.S. service members has this region bracing for much more to come. U.S. officials tell CBS News a 3rd U.S. soldier was killed in northern Iraq during a controlled detonation of an Iranian drone, bringing the total number of U.S. troops killed in action to 17 since the war began. Footage of the precision ballistic missile attack on the U.S. airbase in Jordan suggests it came with little or no warning. Shocked military personnel scrambled to get to shelters. The missile and drone barrage that killed 2 service members, with an additional one still listed as missing, was the 2nd time in 2 days Iran managed to launch a direct hit on that base. Overall, 4 Iranian attacks in 5 days targeting U.S. forces in Jordan has left dozens wounded. President Trump paid tribute to the fallen.
Well, we feel very badly, but you know, those.
No, he didn't.
No,
no, he didn't. No, I'm sorry. Calling what he did a tribute to the fallen is a misuse. You are stretching the definition of the word tribute. Okay? That is crazy. Donald Trump literally, as always, in the classic Trumpian manner, basically was like, oh yeah, they died. Is it 2? Is it 3? I don't know. Like, his first reaction in the media was, we're really going to punish Iran for our brave soldiers. I think it's 2, maybe 3. Who knows? Frankly, I don't care. Pretty much. Yeah, he keeps saying, like, you better not do it again. Don't do it again, Iran. You got a couple, but don't do it again. Like, Houthis are being serious. Another tanker has been hit near the strait east of Oman. Another vessel has been struck near the Strait of Hormuz. UAE, the captain reports that the steering system was hit. Wait, is this them? Is this the Houthis? I don't think so. By the way, Iran has not let up. Iran is still, of course, understandably, going along with their previous retaliations. Yeah, no, that's IRGC. In more important news, the guy that scored for Spain was wearing a "Make Spain Great Again" hat.
Great patriots were out there fighting that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon.
But the recent U.S. airstrikes have been focused on reopening the Strait of Hormuz, not dismantling Iran's nuclear program. The U.S. military has been sending more assets like aerial refuelers to the region, and the deaths of the first U.S. troops in months has only furthered fears the U.S. military response is about to go to the next level.
Now, with Jordan a new front line on this fight, the Jordanian Foreign Ministry has summoned Iran's envoy in order to send a clear message demanding an immediate halt to all attacks, saying the safety of its citizens is a red line that cannot be crossed. Nora?
Watching this very closely, Charlie D'Agata in Jordan, thank you very much.
Kevin, I know you have new reporting that the U.S. is sending additional military aircraft to the Middle East right now. What's the latest?
Yeah, and this coming as the president is weighing whether to widen this conflict. Now the U.S. sending additional F-16 and F-35 fighter jets from bases in Europe towards the Middle East. The U.S. is also increasing the number of aerial
Yeah, they just keep, you know how like the Americans love posting that meme where they're like, feed me the Three Gorges Dam. It's ironic because that's what we've been doing. We've been feeding the Iranians our strato tankers. Like over and over again. We just keep feeding the Iranian beast more MQ-9 Reaper drones and more strato tankers. It's fucking insane. And the problem with this strategy, I mean, there's many problems with the strategy, but the really interesting predicament here is that there is not even any procurement for new additional $32 million Reaper drones. So when they're gone, they're just fucking gone. The new Wall Street Journal reporting seems to confirm that the sirens at Al Salti, which we called out here, aren't even sounding for long enough for all the soldiers to reach safe areas. The early warning capabilities are almost non-existent. In fact, the sirens are not even audible in the video of the third strike. So yeah, that speculation that I brought up, well, it turns out Wall Street Journal also noticed it as well. Not exactly a great situation to be in, I think. Right-wing cope. My favorite variation of the stop messing around, it's time to win knee-jerk reaction. Right-wing cope. My favorite variation of the stop messing around, it's time to win knee-jerk reaction is this one, where the author doesn't seem to understand that we've already broken every conceivable norm. Yeah, oh yeah, this is a classic. Nuke these maniacs and get it over with. Why tit for tat and lose brave servicemen? Why are we playing by some kind of rules? All is fair in love and war. Deal with the consequences afterwards. Yeah, they've been doing that, man. We've been doing that. Oh, just fucking nuke them, big dog. Oh, okay, sure. Don't attack Iran, just nuke it. Yeah. Americana says, my favorite variation of the stop messing around, it's time to win knee-jerk reaction is this one, where the author doesn't seem to understand that we've already broken every conceivable norm in diplomacy, assassinated their head of state, killed negotiators during active negotiations, intentionally targeted civilian infrastructure, blown up schools full of children, and publicly declared our intention to commit genocide. This is what no-rules warfare looks like. But this right here is a recognition that no rules warfare is failing. Okay? That's what that is. This is a guy who is watching the American side lose and is frustrated by that loss. And no one wants to breach the nuke barrier. By the way, the other side of this story that is even crazier, that many of these people aren't even fucking paying attention to, is that there is no guarantee that a fucking nuke is going to stop the Mosaic defense systems. That is the extra scary side of the story that most people are not paying attention to. Why the fuck would Iran stop with a nuke? First of all, a nuke can't reach the actual, a nuke can't penetrate with the bunker buster bombs, the areas that you are trying to blow up. That's number one. So if your option is to nuke population dense areas, because nuking a mountain is not going to do shit, you're not going to waste blowing the no nukes ever treaty, the unspoken treaty that people just don't want to penetrate, because then all of a sudden other nuclear armed nations could use them against non-nuclear proxies. Russia with Ukraine, for example, China with whoever they see fit, for example. Not to say that they would do this, but my point is that's a calculation that America is making all the time. Okay? So they're not going to penetrate the nuclear boundary. But even if they were to penetrate the nuclear boundary because they're fucking crazy, like let's say Israel is the one country that's insane enough to penetrate the nuclear boundary, which would be a major, major breach. Okay. If Israel were to, let's say, penetrate the nuclear boundary, there is no guarantee. If Israel were to, let's say, penetrate the nuclear boundary, there is no guarantee. There is no guarantee whatsoever that this would stop Iran. You can't reach the missile silos that are deep underground, that are hidden inside of the mountains. Okay? America tried that already. And the only thing you can deploy a nuke on is a civilian area. If you deployed a nuke in like Tehran or Isfahan or any of these other like civilian areas, not only is it over for whoever did that, okay, the rest of the world would pounce immediately. That's number one. But number two, perhaps even crazier than that, is that there is no guarantee that Iran would stop. So what do you do then? So these people keep posting like, oh, just fucking nuke Iran, dude. It's going to be fine. There is no guarantee that this would stop Iran. They have a decentralized defense system that was initiated after the decapitation strike that took place on the first day of Operation Epstein Fury. What guarantees do you have that that mosaic system would then stop and go, oh my God, my family members died in Isfahan. Now I'm going to stop blowing up every fucking target I possibly can. If anything, it would probably cause complete collapse of the global energy markets because they would just light every refinery on fire. At that point, it's no holds barred. They would deliver the equivalent, the nuke equivalent, to every oil and gas refinery in the region. All critical infrastructure necessary for energy production would be evaporated. So this is the reason why I think the why don't they just fucking nuke Iran argument is so stupid. The only way that I see that happening is not with America nuking Iran, but with Israel deploying the Samson option, because they feel too threatened that Iranian missiles are penetrating the Israeli defenses, and they've started killing at a point. If the Iranian missiles start killing like too many Israeli civilians, that's the only time that I can see a country deploying nukes against Iran. The entire purpose of nukes is that they are defensive. The entire purpose of having a nuclear arsenal is to ensure that you never use it. Nukes are not developed in a world where other countries have nukes, and it's not just the United States of America having nukes. Nuclear arms are a way to defend your nationhood, your statehood. Okay? Because the way that nukes work is America has the nuclear sponge states, right? Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, and the like. That's where all the nuclear silos are. Why are they over there? Why are they not in Washington, D.C.? Why are they not in Los Angeles? They're there because once the first nuke is launched, then Russia, with its much larger nuclear arsenal, will immediately work to destroy the American nuclear arsenal. It's mutual assured destruction. Now, this is why there was nuclear proliferation. This is why there was a race to develop your nuclear arsenal. But it's a deterrent. It's supposed to be a deterrent. It launches a chain reaction. If two nuclear armed countries ever wage war with one another and they deploy nukes against one another, it's tit for tat from that point on. There's also obviously the nuclear submarines, which were developed after, because once everyone understood where the nuclear silos were, right? The stationary nuclear silos is one thing. Then America and the USSR tried to develop new ways of delivering nukes. Then there's also the anti-defense systems, right? Because anti-defense systems also play a big role in this. Anti-defense systems are a way to stop nuclear arms from being delivered, because nukes, a lot of people don't realize nuclear weapons aren't delivered with a different mechanism. I mean, it's a little bit different than regular ballistic munitions, but when Iran is deploying Oreshniks, for example, they're hypersonics, which were designed and developed in a way to overcome the existing defense systems, the anti-air defense systems that the United States of America created. Okay, Iran developed the Oreshniks, the hypersonic missiles, with higher degree of maneuverability, with multiple reentry vehicle systems, which deploy and then open up right before they're hit. Oreshniks are Russian. Sorry, I was talking about the USSR initially, but Oreshniks are Russian. It's a more modern technology. But the point I'm saying, the point I'm making remains, which is that those multiple reentry vehicles could have nuclear arms in them, okay? Instead of the regular ballistics that they have, they could put nuclear submunitions inside of those multiple reentry vehicles that can open up right before they're intercepted. And some of them even have maneuverability beyond that, okay? Ballistic munitions are just the carrying, the carrier of nuclear arms or regular, the regular explosive ordnance that they have. This is part of the reason why when Russia deploys, those Oreshniks, that's not simply to blow up a oil refinery or blow up an oil depot. This is part of the reason why when Russia deploys, those Oreshniks, that's not simply to blow up a oil refinery or blow up an oil depot in Western Ukraine. It's actually a threat to the rest of Europe, to show the rest of Europe that they could blow up Europe too if they chose to do so. Okay? It's a way to increase their threats against Europe, against all of the other allied nations that are aiding and abetting the Ukrainian defense. Ripple Brain wrote about this, the debasification, the Iranian air war strategy. And it's a decent summary of it. I read it earlier. But basically, he says, the key to American air campaign has always been to degrade Iranian air defense to the point that cheap and plentiful glide or even gravity bombs can be used against targets in Iran, as I've also explained. Right? We have a shit ton of gravity munitions, guided, unguided, but we can't deploy them unless we destroy their anti-air capabilities. Okay? Because it's far more costly to lose a fighter jet with a pilot in it. It's a far bigger wound for American air superiority. But that's the cheap stuff. So the normal air military doctrine is, for the American side, the air military doctrine is to conduct suppression, destruction of enemy air defenses in their operations, which require long loiter times with aircraft remaining in the air to respond to ISR and emissions from air defense radars. So the way to do this is with the MQ-9 Reaper drone. That's the cheapest, most cost-effective way to do it, which is still $32 million a pop. So what these drones do, as I've explained to you over and over again, is they loiter on Iranian airspace and wait for heat patterns. Okay? They wait and wait and wait until there is a strike. Okay? An Iranian strike. And then they try to blow up the Iranian launchers, usually, or to give back feedback coordinates to where the launchers are to our standoff munitions that are being lobbed from the Gulf countries, that are being lobbed from the American naval assets that are hundreds of miles away from Iranian retaliation, from a safe distance. Okay? These missions are exceptionally dependent on tanker support, so any degradation of U.S. tanker operations in turn degrades American S/dead capabilities, the destruction of enemy air defenses operations. This is why there are a fuck ton of Strato tankers that are being deployed in the region. because those MQ-9 Reaper drones have to get refueled. All of these loitering, loitering aerial units, they have to go back every now and then after they've been deployed and get refueled by a Stratotanker. The problem is those Stratotankers need to come closer. And when they come close enough to Iranian anti-air defense capabilities or Iran's own drone striking capabilities, they get blown up. There's also, given how long the missions are, you sometimes run into additional problems where Stratotankers like refueler jets can actually hit one another. They've lost a lot of refueler jets in the process. The American side has lost a lot of Stratotankers in the process. Reapers can't refuel in the air, by the way. It's pronounced seed deed no s/dead. Okay, I'm not the biggest military pervert. I apologize if I get certain things wrong. The refuelers are for the fighter jets, no? It's not MQ-9s. It would have been EA-18s. No, it's been largely MQ-9s going down the last few weeks in the infrared air defense footage. I'm a numbers guy. I'm not a military guy. War Thunderheads can help me with this. Okay. By all available evidence, the Iranian debasification campaign appears to be working. The U.S. force in the region is likely incapable of generating the same combat power in its air operations against Iran as it could when the war started. And things are trending even further in a negative direction. Even worse, there's no clear solution on the horizon. The most obvious lever for American planners to pull is to accept more casualties and losses of personnel and airframes. But this is an unprecedented step in the modern incarnation of the U.S. military has never faced. Not only does this have a significant cost, this is a significant financial penalty, there's also obviously issues on the manufacturing side. It takes a long time to make newer versions of these fucking Stratotankers. We obviously have a deep bench. But ultimately, we're just throwing MQ-9 Reaper drones and Stratotankers into the Iranian defenses and hoping that eventually there will be a better outcome. All the while, the things that we are hitting inside of Iran are cheap. Okay? They're unbelievably cheap. They're super easy to manufacture. Like, these TELs that the Iranians are using, right? They're transporter erector launchers. The TELs that they are using are basic vehicles, commercially available, readily available vehicles that have, a platform that they solder onto the back of the fucking vehicle. So even if you blow one of these up, it's basically fucking single use. Which is part of the reason why they gave up on blowing up these TELs anyway, fairly early on. Yeah, they weld it, sorry, not solder. They weld it, whatever. They bolt it. It's just like super efficient and super cheap. Especially considering that Iran has a major domestic manufacturing capability.
Here's my tip.
Yeah, Fareed Zakaria is now posting about how China has won the Iran war. Did the U.S. not expect the tankers to be within the drone strike range? It's hard to believe that was a U.S. strat without protecting their tankers. I think it's coming from a place of... It's not coming from a place of like sound analysis. I think it's coming from a place of desperation. They have to do something. Iran is like a fucking pit bull. I don't think it's even hubris. I don't think it's arrogance. I think arrogance is what caused the initial strikes. Okay? But I don't think at this point it's arrogance that's pushing them to keep trying the same thing and expect different results. Okay? I think at this point they're just desperate for any kind of attrition. So they're just throwing these unbelievably costly assets in the field of battle, in striking distance of Iranian drones, Iranian loitering munitions, Iranian anti-air defenses, hoping to generate a different result that they haven't seen thus far. Of course, there's an alternative here. There's an alternative solution to this madness, which requires the Americans to come back to the negotiations process. Here is the conversation that took place between the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, who said wars end either through total victory or negotiations, which literally, by the way, verbatim. What do I always say? I mean, it's a very common fucking statement, but in my headcanon, he heard me say that, and he's quoting me. A war must be ended precisely at the point when you hold the upper hand on the battlefield. Ending a war is possible either through total military victory or through negotiations. The right time to negotiate is exactly when you have achieved reliable military and strategic gains on the battlefield. The politician must always ask this fundamental question: will continuing the war increase the gains or only increase the losses? Like, for example, what happened in Germany in World War II, meaning that it is occupied, or what happened to Saddam in the war and other such cases, because we don't have that capability. If you have that capability, then go and finish it. This is him, by the way, speaking to the hardliners. This is not for Western ears. This is for the hardliners to hear. Just so you understand. Because we don't have that capability. If you have that capability, then you go and finish it. We don't have that capability. We cannot go and overrun and occupy Israel and America. We cannot gamble with people's lives and the fate of the entire country. Decisions must be based on precise and comprehensive calculations. If you seek to end the war through negotiations in a way that prevents it from recurring, you must act at a time when your strength and upper hand have been firmly established. In this war, despite some losses, we emerged as a decisive international actor and demonstrated the resilience of the system. Accurately identifying the moment to stop the war and begin negotiations is the most vital and consequential part of crisis management for any official. In theory, one must always assess whether continuing the war from the current point will produce stronger gains at the negotiating table or merely impose heavier human and national costs. He also he also described that Iran believed that the war was coming before the negotiations ended. Araghchi said the Iranian political and military officials were certain an attack was coming. Tehran nevertheless entered 3 rounds of negotiations because there remained some chance of avoiding war, and so no one could later claim Iran had refused diplomacy. The central dispute remained enrichment. Washington demanded zero enrichment and a later multi-year suspension. Iran refused. Araghchi said, even at the cost of war. He said that by Friday, after the final round of talks in Geneva, he had concluded war was certain. Oman's foreign minister, Badr al-Busaidi, traveled to Washington and warned Araghchi that the atmosphere there had become completely oriented towards war, even as he sought a meeting with J.D. Vance amid concerns that Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner had not accurately conveyed the negotiations. Iran had pre-planned its response if the leadership was killed. One of the biggest L's for the fucking moderates, for the reformers, and also for the ones who want to negotiate with the Western world on the Iranian team, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, is their over-reliance on the integrity of J.D. Vance. I think these guys sincerely believe that J.D. Vance is an isolationist or is far more reasonable than Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. Okay? They're just wrong. They're objectively wrong, and they don't fucking understand that they're wrong about this. And that's part of the reason why they're going to keep fucking getting into this situation where they're like, oh, bring J.D. Vance here, please. Let's talk to J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance has the ear of the president. They don't realize that the president fucking hates J.D. Vance. Like, look, they're great at diplomacy. They're great diplomats. They're great chess players, okay? I'm not disrespecting the Iranian team here. It's very clear that they fucking defeated the United States of America. The most powerful country on the planet has been brought to heel in this process by a nation that's far, far smaller, right? But I think this is a major mistake Mersheimer also has this weird belief. I think it's fucking unfounded. They're not capable of reading the internal diplomacy that's taking place in the White House within the highest office between Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. I don't think J.D. Vance is in any way, shape, or form sincerely invested in stopping this war. I think he's just positioning himself as an anti-war guy so that he has a better chance of winning once Trump is out of office. That's it. Iran had pre-planned its response if the leadership was killed. Iraq said the Supreme National Security Council had prepared written plans for scenarios ranging from U.S.-only attacks to joint U.S.-Israeli strikes, attacks on infrastructure, last scenario. But I think this is a major mistake. Mersheimer also has this weird belief. I think it's fucking unfounded. They're not capable of reading the internal diplomacy that's taking place in the White House within the highest office between Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. I don't think J.D. Vance is in any way, shape, or form sincerely invested in stopping this war. I think he's just positioning himself as an anti-war guy so that he has a better chance of winning once Trump is out of office. That's it. Iran had pre-planned its response if the leadership was killed. Iraq said the Supreme National Security Council had prepared written plans for scenarios ranging from U.S.-only attacks to joint U.S.-Israeli strikes, attacks on infrastructure. Last scenario was reportedly assigned to code because officials did not want to say it out loud. Code 110. Arakshi said the plan included immediately closing the Strait of Hormuz if the leader was targeted and activating a broader regional military response. Arakshi said he survived the opening attack himself. He was inside of a leadership compound warning a senior official that an attack was imminent when multiple buildings were struck. He described 3 explosions, ceilings, walls collapsing, wounded people screaming at himself, and Mohammed Hijazi climbing through the steel beams and rubble to escape. A stranger eventually drove the dust-covered foreign minister back to the ministry. Arakshi said simultaneous attacks targeted meetings involving military commanders, intelligence officials, and senior leadership, exposing a major security breach. He suggested that the breach may extend beyond espionage to attempts to... What are you doing? What are you doing? That's so funny. She just cracks open the door and stares outside. Tehran immediately warned the Gulf that the U.S. bases would be hit. Within hours, Arakshi said he personally called Gulf foreign ministers and told them Iran would strike American forces stationed in the territory. This is before the MOU, by the way. This is like how the opening salvo worked. Anyway, months after that story took place, now Fareed Zakaria has a different calculation. Let's take a look.
As the war with Iran blows up and cools down from week to week, one trend is clear. The biggest beneficiary of this conflict is China. Beijing did not have to fire a shot, spend vast sums, or use up political capital, but it has gained more from this crisis than any other in 3 decades. The war accelerated 3 of China's long-held goals: a Middle East less dependent on America, a world
Xavier Zakaria
more dependent on critical Chinese technology, and a reputation for Beijing as a serious and steady world power. Beijing has not tried to replace Washington as the Middle East's military guarantor. That would require expensive commitments. Its aim has been simpler and more subtle: get Gulf states to detach somewhat from the American orbit. Donald Trump is doing much of that work for Xi Jinping. America's Gulf allies have watched as Washington waged this war in chaotic fashion and with little regard for the damage inflicted on their cities, infrastructure, and economies. The Gulf is now dividing into 2 camps. The United Arab Emirates is drawing closer to Israel and Washington, but a larger group led by Saudi Arabia and including Qatar, Oman, and perhaps Iraq and even Turkey is likely to seek long-term security through a balance: continued ties with the United States, but also dialogue with Iran and better relations with China. That is precisely the regional order Beijing has favored. In 2023, China brokered the restoration of diplomatic relations between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Riyadh has since resisted joining certain American-led joint data center and computer chip projects. It has bought Chinese missiles and drones, held exercises with the Chinese Navy, and explored local production of wing-loon combat drones. Gulf countries accounted for more than 80% of Chinese defense exports to the Middle East from 2016 through 2025. No one is trying to replace America's security umbrella, but they want options, and options reduce American leverage. China's more impressive victory is geoeconomic. At first glance, a country that imports about 70% of its oil should be among the war's biggest losers. Yet China has weathered the shock better than most countries because it spent years preparing. It diversified suppliers, built what is estimated to be the world's largest oil stockpile, continued using coal and expanded nuclear power, and electrified its economy on a scale no other major country has matched. Electricity now accounts for about 30% of Chinese energy consumption, almost 40% more than in the United States or Europe. China installed more than half of all new global wind and solar capacity in 2024. For these reasons, China was able to cut back on its imported oil purchases during the war by some 4 million barrels a day. The war has become a giant advertisement for China's critical technologies. Governments everywhere are looking to build up their solar power, batteries, wind turbines, electric vehicles, and grids. China controls about 91% of global solar panel manufacturing capacity and 89% of lithium-ion battery capacity. Chinese firms manufacture at least 70% of almost all clean energy technologies tracked by Bloomberg. The longer energy insecurity persists, the more the world will buy into industries China dominates. The war also advances a key Chinese goal, weakening the dollar's hold over global commerce. Iran reportedly allowed some tankers through the Strait of Hormuz on the condition that transactions be settled in Chinese renminbi or in cryptocurrency. China and its partners have effectively expanded renminbi-dominated trade to reduce exposure to American sanctions. The shift will be gradual, but the trend is now unmistakable, away from dollar dominance. Finally, there's the reputational windfall. The Trump administration entered this war with grand goals: regime change, destruction of Iran's nuclear program, eradicating its ballistic missile capabilities, and its support for regional proxies. It has achieved none durably. Instead, it is now hoping simply to open the Strait of Hormuz, which was open before the war began. Donald Trump chose.
There is literally nothing redeemable about the American century of humiliation. There's no rhyme or reason for why we behave the way that we do. There's no strategic, tactical goals that we're achieving in the process. It's just like, I don't know how to fucking... I don't know how to explain it. It's just so senseless. It's just so unbelievably stupid. I don't know how to explain it. It's just so senseless. It's just so unbelievably stupid. That's why we call Donald J. Trump JD Pondom, baby.
This war, and in doing so,
that's why the Chinese netizens call him Donald Trump, the great nation builder for China.
Blew through tens of billions of dollars, wasted America's munitions, diverted military assets from Asia, unsettled allies, and demonstrated that even with America's enormous power, a misguided strategy and constantly changing tactics will produce bad results. China did remarkably little. It kept buying Iranian oil, maintained relations with the Gulf states, avoided the costs of defending Iran or policing the Gulf. This is Beijing's preferred approach. No dramatic confrontations, but rather the steady accumulation of influence. Over the last 25 years, the United States has exhausted itself in 3 major military adventures in the greater Middle East, while China has accumulated manufacturing power, technological capacity.
Dude, for the last decade or so, I have verbatim said this, and everyone told me to shut the fuck up, that I'm a campus, that I'm a tanky. Like, literally, I had a very simple premise, and many people on the left also had this very simple premise. What if, instead of constantly waging war at the behest of petro-capitalist pedophiles, we instead did what China does and just focus on building out a domestic manufacturing, a robust base for manufacturing here in the United States of America, focus on developing the country, focus on fixing our infrastructure. What if we spent the $7-8 trillion that we spent on murdering brown people overseas instead here on the home front? Okay. And every single time, from right-wingers who told me to get the fuck out of this country to liberals who also said the same, the answer was always, wow, you're a fucking campist. Wow, you're a fucking tanky. Wow, why don't you dick ride China further? 10 years after the fact, now you got Fareed Zakaria or Xavier Zakaria. 10 years after the fact, now you got Fareed Zakaria or Xavier Zakaria on CNN, Clinton News Network, saying the same shit. Will people finally understand that there is a better world out there? There's a better future? Should we retreat from our endless, ceaseless militarism overseas and focus on building the home front? Probably not. There are far too many profits to be made for the military-industrial complex here, so we're just going to keep doing business as usual.
And diplomatic relationships. Washington acts, Beijing waits. China has paid costs for this war: higher energy prices, disrupted supply chains, and weaker global demand. But power is always relative. Measured against the damage to America's goals, alliances, and credibility, China has come out ahead. More than a year ago, China decided to remind the world just how easily it can choke the global economy. Last April, in response to U.S. tariffs, Beijing...
Oh my God. By the way, they had the architect of the Liberation Day tariffs guy on the New York Times this morning, and it made me rip my fucking hair out. One, because he sounds exactly like J.D. Vance. There's a liberal Groyper speech pattern now, okay? Guy who's like read too many books and is like really fucking nerdy, but also is trying to advance Trump's agenda. And he sounded exactly like J.D. Vance. That's number one. Number two, they asked him straight up. They were like, okay, don't you feel like this is having an inflationary effect? He's like, no, of course not. Okay, of course not. That's not what's going on. And then they were like, well, don't you feel like sure, there's some benefits to domestic manufacturing. It's made domestic manufacturing more competitive for certain industries, but like they kept asking over and over again, like, well, don't you think about the consequences to allies that we're just trying to rip apart these previous relationships that we have with other allies that we're just tariffing endlessly? No, we're just here to, Trump understands the importance, the significance, like the moment. He understands the need in this moment. Like, he just walked past their fucking questions over and over again. It was so goddamn frustrating. Not as frustrating as not receiving Level 10 Hype Train, which is incoming right now, of course. As always, Piker Broadcasting Service is sponsored by you, the people, for you, the people. There's a Hype Train that is imminent right now. And as is always the case, once we receive Level 10 on the motherfucking Hype Train, once we get to Level 10 on the Hype Train, you already know what's up. We will carry the motherfucking flame as always, as we do every damn day. On topic, Trump announces 50% tariffs. What? On many Canadian goods? Wait, what is happening? On many Canadian goods? Wait, what is happening? What is going on, brother? What the fuck? What? Why? What is happening? Oh my God. Oh my God. It's so stupid. Another one of the questions that was asked of the Trump tariff guy was, well, what is the sufficient, like, what's the real legal reason for, the Supreme Court obviously found them to be wrong and outside of the bounds of the executive. But like, what do you say to the question that like he implemented tariffs on Brazil for the Brazilian government prosecuting Bolsonaro? And he was just like, no, it's just because there's a real economic need. Really? There's a real economic need to tariff Brazil? News to me. Where's the fucking surplus? What's the real economic need to tariff Brazil? Why are we, if we're fixing the trade deficit, why are we tariffing countries with a surplus? What is the reason? It's so stupid. And it turns out, according to the BBC, Trump threatens new Canada tariffs over fire, sending filthy air to U.S. cities. What? Why? Brother. I don't know what to say to this, man. It's just like, I always try to find rhyme or reason for the administration. The administration is not one guy. There's no single decision-making capability here. It's not supposed to be. It's not supposed to be this way. This is money molestation. It doesn't make sense. It's the one thing that you're not supposed to do. You're not allowed to molest the bag. You're not allowed to molest the money. It doesn't make any fucking sense.
Make of the breaking news here, 50% tariffs on Canada because of what the president says is reckless mismanagement of now 955 wildfires.
Well, he's right. I mean, there is reckless mismanagement.
Dude, what are you saying, dude? What are you saying? He's right? Really? He's right. Is there anything this man won't molest? Incredible stuff, man. Yeah. Be on the lookout in the upcoming days for Donald Trump to come out and do the classic spiel. Canada is not raking the forests, okay? They got a lot of shrubbery. They got too much shrubbery, too much dead trees on the ground of the forest, and they're not raking it. They're not doing sufficient. He already did. I mean, what? Even the Fox Business woman, the Fox Business host is like, really? Really? Like, she doesn't believe him. He doesn't believe himself.
I told him, I mean, you got to stop these fires from coming in and, poisoning our air. Our air has been poisoned. I have a good relationship with Mark Carney, but, we got to stop the fires up there. If we can help them, we'll help them. But maybe they should pay us some damages or something, or we should do some tariffs. But it was terrible. I mean, you had businesses closing. In particular, Michigan. If you look at Detroit, Michigan area, they had to close everything. They had to close car plants and a lot of other things. So I've never remembered this happening. Over the last 4 or 5 years, you saw it starting to take place. I've never remembered it happening.
Great, I guess.
Well, he's right. I mean, there is reckless mismanagement. This is not only in Canada, but California does the same thing. Understand, this is the ultra left again who puts out these policies. They don't want Americans to have air conditioning, to have,
What? What the fuck are you saying? What the fuck is coming out of your stupid fucking mouth, man? What the hell? The ultra left wants wildfires. They don't want us to have air conditioning. How is that in any way, shape, or form? If anything, you could make the opposite argument. We want air conditioning so much that our carbon footprint has destroyed the fucking planet and therefore has created this inconsistent hydration pattern in the forest. The forests are more likely to catch on fire now more than anything else. Our endless appetite for profiteering has made it so that we don't have enough money in the bank for forest management. And of course, this is how the dry ass forests catch on fire. There's far more fuel than ever before because the climate change has made the weather conditions so unstable that first it rains too much and it's overfeeding the forests, and then it's far too dry. So now you have more fuel than ever before. And they catch on fire, and then it's far too difficult to put out.
Cars and a lot of the things that we have and the energy that we use, we've done more damage in a short period of time from Canada than any of that would ever do. It's horrible. It's bad for people and their health. It's bad for the tourism industry and all industries and all businesses. Certainly, Canada's got to straighten this out. It didn't have to be that way. It reminds me of the wind turbines that were supposed to be pro-environment.
Bro used a clear-cut example of anthropogenic climate change's devastating outcomes to present an argument against renewable energies that would actually soften the anthropogenic climate change and reverse some of our carbon footprint. I am losing my mind. We are led by fucking baboons. We are led by morons. We're so fucked, dude. We are so endlessly fucked. Americans look at every problem and immediately demand more of the inciting incident. We look at gun violence and we say, what's the solution? More guns, please. Give the fucking, my only solution to combating school shootings is to arm the teachers. Fuck it, arm the students. Give them goddamn kindergartners a handgun, maybe a hand grenade. This is insane. You know how we make sure the climate change... Sorry, I apologize. I got real Chinese for a moment. Excuse me for bringing up fake Chinese inventions like climate change. You know what our solution to these wildfires is? More carbon footprint. Fuck the wind turbines. That makes us gay. We've gotten too homified. That's the reason why these forests are catching on fire. God's punishing us.
And hurt the environment. It reminds me of their energy program, which was supposed to be pro-environmental and save money, which cost a fortune and would have created and does create more problems than ever. It doesn't work. Socialism doesn't work. The Democratic Party doesn't work. And certainly Canada isn't working because there's so far left. This is a warning shot to...
Like, there is, at some point, it's like super basic. We look at China's rise as a global power. And then we look at America's decline on the one hand and Europe's decline as well. There's like very clearly one simple answer. It's not even like an ideological commitment to socialism versus capitalism. I'm not even making that argument. But there is one thing that China does that we don't do. And I think that's born out of, obviously, capitalism and the endless need for profit seeking. Okay? And that is when there's a problem, the government looks at that problem and says, we are going to solve this problem. That's it. China, due to rapid industrialization, had a fuck ton of issues with air quality. Okay, a decade ago, they had tremendous smog. They had cities that were rendered uninhabitable. Right, this was a huge issue. So China did what? They looked at it and they were like, okay, we got to move away from this shit. We got to move away from this. Although it's obviously beneficial for us to keep using coal-powered power plants, okay? It's instead of choosing maximum efficiency, they moved in the direction of renewable energy.